Hey guys, that's right, stock images have returned to the channel, and hopefully a few other changes that you like. This episode will feature entirely fan-submitted stories and will start to include more and more of your stories. So please post your stories on r/VoiceyHere or send them to voiceyherestories@gmail.com. The backstory. I have a walking disability where I can't walk very long distances without taking breaks on benches every 10 minutes. I also have duck feet, which means since I was born, I have had twisted knees, which makes my feet stick out in a weird way, which is pretty noticeable, but either people didn't notice or just didn't care. A few days ago, me and my boyfriend, Paul, went on a day trip to Stanford Park. We live in England, and we're both around 21 years old. All year round, it's basically a ginormous field, with a closed cafe in the middle. But in the summer, it gets transformed into a huge theme park with bouncy castles, and ice cream trucks are there 24/7, and water fountains, and even a sand park. But you have to get there early, or else by 11 AM, the entire park will be filled with people lying on towels, and you'll have nowhere to sit. So me and Paul go there around 9 AM by my car. The morning was great. We each had a go on the bouncy castle, and we'd had some ice cream. And then after the nature trail around the park, we went to sit on a bench and watch the sunset on the hill. We had been there all day, and the nature trail took all afternoon. Plus it was really romantic. So we sat on the bench and my legs felt so much better already, as we hadn't had a chance to sit down properly yet. We realized we were a bit early for the sunset, so we just closed our eyes for a bit, because the only thing we could see was trees and the sun. After around 5 minutes of this, someone started poking me in the arm really hard. This person, to nobody's surprise, was an entitled parent. Ow! What is it? Then Paul opened his eyes and saw what I did.
Hi, sorry. I don't know my own strength. I thought you were asleep. Sorry, I was just going to ask you to move up so that me and my son could sit down. We've been here since 9 AM and we haven't sat down much.
Behind her, I saw a kid who looked around 10, sat on a towel on his phone. Sure, you can sit down, but this is a massive bench and me and my boyfriend are sat at the end of it. You didn't have to poke me to sit down. The kid looked up when he heard this and mouthed, "Sorry" to me. I nodded very quickly to let him know I understood. Then I began to watch the sunset and relax. But then, all I heard was really loud metal/screamo songs coming from the entitled parent's phone. She had put earphones in, but not properly. Ma'am? I can hear your music. You haven't put your earphones in properly.
Sorry.
She puts her earphones in properly, then loudly starts to try to make conversation with us. Look, I understand there isn't much to do right now, but as you can see, I'm trying to watch the sunset with my boyfriend. So I would really appreciate if you could just be quiet right now. I stood up at this point and immediately stumbled, because my legs had gotten too used to relaxing. Paul saw this and stood up with me to catch me. If I stumbled again because we're on a hill, I could easily fall off. You okay? Yeah. I think EP then noticed my duck feet.
Isn't it uncomfortable standing like that?
Huh? Oh, no, I have duck feet. I then explained my disability to her and how I have twisted knees. When I finished, entitled parents started laughing.
Am I supposed to believe that? What idiot would come here if they had a walking disability?
I then realized the sun had set. Great, now I've been laughed at for my disability, and the entire point of why I came to sit on this bench has set. Why don't we just go get something from the cafe and head home? We need a proper meal anyway. All day we've just been eating ice cream. Okay. We start to head down the hill when entitled parent goes past us, while practically dragging the kid to the bottom. And they do all that just to sit at a table outside the cafe. I tell Paul what I want and he goes in to get the food. I then realize I forgot to give him the money, so I walk in after him, only to be tripped by EP sticking her foot out. I began to fall but saved myself with my hands quickly. But because of the speed I was going, My arm cracked as it hit the floor and broke. I screamed in agony and felt someone lift me up onto the chair. What happened? I tried to point to entitled parent with my arm, but I hadn't realized it had broken. I screamed again. Okay, I know that it hurts, but you have to tell me how you fell. I then took an agonizing breath to stop myself from screaming and said, entitled parent. Paul was furious, but luckily, a cafe employee heard this and approached the entitled parent. Ma'am, is this true? Did you trip up this young woman? Her kid responded.
Yes. What? No, it isn't. She had a walking disability. She told me herself.
We are aware of her situation. She informed us this morning after she stumbled in the cafe.
Mom, stop it. It's not going to work. It never does. Just admit you tripped her up, because if you don't, the camera will do it for you.
He then pointed to his phone, and turns out that he had recorded the entire thing right from the top of the hill. The entitled parent was arrested. My arm is still healing. And the next day, we went back to the hill to watch the sunset again, and Paul proposed to me. I said yes, and we are to be married on March 7th, which is the date of the day I asked Paul on a date in the exact same spot 11 years ago, when we were both in 5th grade. We have been together ever since that day. Most of this story took place almost 21 years ago, but it's still as fresh in my head as if it happened yesterday. The backstory. I am mentally disabled. I'm not autistic, though for years it was assumed I was, but high on the spectrum. But several years ago, it was discovered I likely had a different disability. For most of my school years, I went to several schools for kids with learning disabilities. I actually spent 4 amazing years at a wonderful elementary school. But then came middle school, and possibly the 3 worst years. In this program, I was assigned one teacher for all 3 years who taught all the basics: math, history, English, etc. For purposes, let's call her Mrs. Karen, or Mrs. K. I had heard of students who transferred to avoid her. She was that mean. I hear stories of entitled teachers, but sometimes I think Mrs. K takes the cake. She would give lunch detention and in-school suspension so frequently, as if it was part of the curriculum, and mostly for absolutely no reason. Usually I was the one who felt her wrath the most. I was a pretty good student. I had been told I was an excellent reader, better than most in any class. I actually loved going to school. I always had a smile on my face, unless Mrs. K made my life miserable. On a field trip to the beach, I got lunch detention right there on the spot, all because I had gotten wet. It wasn't my fault. We were told we could put our feet in the water, but the waves were a little harsh, and I lost my balance several times. She didn't care. She put me in lunch detention right away. I was, and sometimes still, very emotional, so I cried. Mrs. K didn't try to make things better. No, she made things worse by taking a photo, knowing full well what it was, and then put it in the yearbook. So there is an embarrassing photo taken by the teacher and put in by the teacher. On several occasions, she'd tell me I needed to lose weight. I was a little overweight, but it wasn't that bad. Plus, it's not her business. Plus, she would remind me how crooked my teeth were and needed braces, which I eventually did. Now, for the main story. In February of 1999, I was a handful of months away from graduating and getting away from her. I, all of a sudden, had a stomach pain. I figured it was a stomach virus, as I've had it plenty of times. I went to her and told her I was feeling sick. Excuse me, Mrs. K, I'm not feeling well. Can I call my dad to pick me up?
No, you're probably faking to get out of school early.
It was maybe 12:30. I'm not. My stomach, it's really bothering me.
If you are sick, then why did you come to school?
Looking back, I wish I had responded with, if I was faking, I'd want to lie before school started, not 2 hours before it ended. She wasn't giving in, and my stomach was really bad. After a while, she eventually said,
Fine. Call your dad.
I think she only agreed just to shut me up. My dad worked 10 minutes or so away, but I went to school 30 minutes away from home. So if my dad did pick me up, he'd miss over an hour of work. Sure, no problem, I'll pick you up. Sure enough, my dad got me and took me home, so I could get my rest. My dad was the best, as he of course didn't mind. He knew I was never the kind of person to fake being sick. I knew I was 100% sick, so kept it easy for the rest of the day. Then came one heck of a morning. I woke up suddenly at maybe 6 a.m. The stomach pain was gone, but in its place was something way worse. It was a stabbing pain on my lower right side. It was nothing I'd ever felt before. I got up out of bed to my parents' room to wake them up. They were trying to get more sleep as he had to get ready for work soon, and she had to get ready to open her home daycare. I walked in to let them know how I felt. My side is killing me. I wasn't kidding. Now my parents are not the kind to jump to conclusions, but they still keep it safe. Try sleeping it off. At that point, we all might have thought it was just a super stomach virus or something, so I agreed to go back to bed. I wasn't going to school that day anyway, as I was sick the day before, but I couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned as the pain was too much for anyone to handle. To this day, the worst physical pain I've ever had by a long shot. So I went back to that room not even 15 minutes later. My side is killing me. I think it might be best to take him to the emergency room, just to be safe. Good idea. He never complains for nothing. My dad got up and we made the 5-minute drive to the emergency room. We lived close to 2 hospitals, each within 5 minutes of us. After several tests like x-rays, urine tests, etc., I was then prepped for an emergency appendectomy. Doctors told me my appendix was bad, like if I waited longer, it might have burst. My mum, then first chance she got, gave Mrs. K a piece of her mind, calling her out on calling me a liar the day before, when in all of the 3 years she had me, I had never faked an illness to get out of school early. Mrs. K was speechless. I don't know what happened afterwards. I spent 3 days in hospital and luckily had the week after off anyway, for winter break. So I had 2 weeks to recover before heading back, which Mrs. K apologized to me. I did get a little revenge as one day I lost it. Behind closed doors gave her a piece of my mind for how she treated me for the last 3 years. The detentions, in-school suspensions, the insults, etc. I can't remember her reaction, but I'm sure it shocked her, as I never got in trouble for my outburst. As I said, this happened a few months before graduation, so never had to deal with her again the following school year. She would retire the year after I graduated, so not many more students had to endure her. This happened a few days ago. I had gone on my usual shopping with help from the staff, as the manager is a friend of my mother. They were dinner ladies in my old school, and got along really well, became friends, and so I always ask the manager if anyone is free. I would appreciate the help as I feel nervous being by myself due to my autism. Well, while I was shopping, an entitled mum kept trying to steal my stuff from my trolley while I was comparing prices on products, so I can last longer with my budget. I managed to catch the entitled mum a few times, and asked why she was taking stuff I was buying. She said this:
"You can always get replacements, stop complaining."
I start getting stressed and breaking down as the entitled mum starts ripping into me about my stutter. Here are a few of the things she said.
"Stop talking. You're like a broken record. Are you stupid? You need help to talk? You're pathetic."
I start sobbing and the manager is called over the radio. The Karen is told to leave me alone and that if she kept bothering me, she would be banned for harassing a disabled girl. Karen calls Teresa the N-word and a snitch and leaves. I managed to get myself together after Teresa and the manager helped me calm down. Teresa gets approval from the manager to run my trolley through to get the stuff on my shopping list. I always make a list before I get on the bus to the shop, while the manager kept me company at the customer service tills. Teresa came back after about 5 minutes and helped me run the items through the checkout, with the manager taking 10% off my total as a discount for not losing my temper at the entitled mum we encountered earlier. A taxi was called for me, and I waited outside in the parking area next to where the old Blockbuster used to be. I still miss that place. Teresa comes out to make sure I'm doing okay. My eyes were a little bit puffy, and my face a bit red. The EM from earlier comes to the parking area, apparently waiting for her boyfriend, and spots me.
You!
She screeches in a high pitch so bad my ears were ringing.
You little punk! You caused me so much freaking trouble tonight. I'm gonna mess you up, stupid.
What she forgot was that I was sitting/leaning on the ledge of those pole things on the edge of the parking areas. As soon as I moved when she went to swing a kick at me, a crunch was heard. She broke her freaking foot. I started laughing at how stupid she was for doing that, and Teresa scolded me, telling me that while it was a little bit funny, it wasn't the right time to laugh. The EM is screaming for help and crying assault. An ambulance was called for her, and she screamed that she would see me in court. I start losing it a bit due to the stress making my emotions go haywire, and I am pulled away further down the parking area while she is treated to first aid while waiting for the ambulance. The ambulance takes her away, with police being called as well. The manager has shown the police the CCTV footage of the parking area, showing all I did was dodge her. The EM tried kicking me. The police chuckled a bit and asked to talk to me. I got help to call my aunt, who we will call Mandy, and she got the report from the manager. Mandy became my appropriate adult, I think it is called. She helped me answer questions when I struggled to get my words out. Police were done in about 10 minutes. Mandy offered to take me home instead of paying for a taxi. I felt guilty about the taxi, but said yes. I hugged the manager and climbed in the back of Mandy's car after loading my bags into the trunk. I love my Aunt Mandy.